Right, so yesterday Tottenham played two pre-season games, both draws, 2-2 with Wycombe at the training ground and then 0-0 with Luton at Kenilworth Road. They were very much played like friendlies, so not too brilliant to watch, but I'm sure Thomas Frank was really happy with the decision to play the two games in one day. Got lots of minutes in the legs, no injuries, not during the games anyway. And a closer look at some of the players. Like I say, not going to dwell too much on the results. It's pre-season. We've got some sort of more indicative games coming up with Arsenal, Newcastle, and Bayern Munich. But it does give us some more information about what Spurs look like under Thomas Frank. What we're going to do is go over a couple of things. I'm going to look at the team selections in each game, some bits there that we can pick out. Our in possession tactics, I'm going to go back over again. And I'm going to do another little review of the depth chart because we know a bit more now. So what this means for the season, and it would be really good if I knew who was travelling for the pre-season tour, but not quite yet. So yeah, stick around and we'll go through it. Okay, so these were the teams that started. Bentancur was supposed to play in the first game but was ill, so George Abbott played instead. More on that later. And then Destiny Doggy pulled out the second game just beforehand, so Jamie Donnelly had to fill in the left back. More on that later too. One of the aspects I found a little bit weird about the team selection was using Brandon Austin in the first match, for the whole of the first match, and having Kinski and Vicario split the second game. Surely we know that Austin is the three, and the whole point was to get minutes. Wouldn't you want those minutes going to the one to the two, particularly because I'm not sure there is a clear number one at the minute. Kinski's looking pretty impressive, and I would have thought taking a longer look at him would have been a priority. But then maybe the plan is to do that on tour, Arsenal, Newcastle, and Bayern Munich, which should be more competitive games simply due to the qualities of the opponent. So we'll have a look at that. Another thing that was interesting was that last week against Reading, we saw Porro and Udogie together. Udogie was pushed high up the pitch and used in the same way that Thomas Rank was using Keane Lewis Potter last year at Brentford. Essentially a left winger in possession with the actual left winger playing further inside. That was Mikey Moore versus Reading. To keep a back three at the back, Porro then tucked in, Romero moved into the middle, and Danso to the left. Against Wycombe, we saw Ben Davies at left back, and this time Pedro Porro was given the role of pushing up like a right winger, with Davies then tucking into the three, Romero moving over into the middle, and then Vuskovic shuffling onto the right. The first takeaway from this is how good Romero is going to be in that role, the centre back in the 3-2-5 in possession. Last year, And was building up in the 2-3-5 possession, and Romero was on the right of the two, with the CDM kind of controlling the tempo. Thomas Frank is clearly really keen to having Christian Romero on the ball as much as possible, which makes perfect sense. He is potentially the best ball-playing centre-back in the world. And here he can really dictate the tempo. And he's got a lot of the ability and the willingness to play those beautiful line-breaking passes. But then, due to Davies being the left back, so he was the one tucking in for this game, and with Porro getting the license to bomb forward and looking to do so, I found myself thinking, is Porro not going to get the chance to do this when Destiny Doggy's playing? Kind of like with in the Reading game. And obviously we want those players to be in as much as possible. Luckily, Smarty Pants Thomas Franks was 10 steps ahead of me and had planned 2 games in one day. And I could see in the Luton game, we had Spence at right back and Udogie at left back. Spence is not really that suited to doing that role Porro was doing against Reading, being the right of a back three, while Udogie pushes on. And Udogie looks so good in that role versus Reading, you wouldn't really want him being the one tucking in. So the only solution I could think of and was looking forward to seeing was that one of the centre midfielders would drop into the three, both fullbacks then providing the width of the pitch. Unfortunately, Destiny Doggy pulled out just before kick-off. I think he felt something in the warm-up. And with Ben Davies having played in the earlier match, Jamie Donnelly was actually brought in to replace him. Now, Donnelly was never going to be sort of tucking into the back three, so we still got to take a little bit of a peek at it. And when I first saw the lineups, I assumed it would be Archie Gray dropping to the right of the back three, Danso shifting into the centre, and Van de Ven on the left. But actually, we saw Basuma dropping from midfield into the left of the three, Van de Ven in the centre, and Danso onto the right. And I assume partly this was because of the last minute need to play Donnelly, who has covered at left back before, but is obviously more of a 10, who instead of being used like Udogie going up the wing, he was actually sort of inverting into midfield, into one of the two of the 3-2-5 in build up, with Archie Gray. I'm not sure that this worked. I definitely want to see it again with the first 11, but against Luton, it didn't really work. Donnelly inverting meant that Brennan Johnson had to play wide on the left to keep the width, which didn't suit him. Basuma doesn't really have the passing range to play that midfielder dropping into the centre back, into the back three. And that meant that there were lots of very safe passes on that side. Johnson was pretty much left on an island. Tell is not a natural with hold-up play. Mikey Moore looked a little bit lost, and also played a lot of very safe passes himself. So I think it was just really hard for them to progress the ball up the field, get the ball forward. And I think this played out in the numbers. So there was 65% possession in the whole game, only 2 shots total for Tottenham, which I was surprised when I had to go back and see that. But yeah, 2 shots total. I actually thought that something would come from Kudus and Spence on the right. It looked like they were forming a bit of a partnership against Reading, but Kudus looked just as isolated as Brennan Johnson. Spence seemed to be trying to do a little bit too much in possession, and he lost it a few times during build-up. I think this was all a bit of a shame. I know it's only pre-season, but I was quite excited when I saw the lineups. I had a feeling Thomas Frank would want to use Brennan Johnson on the left. He almost always inverts his wingers. I think Mikey Moore's future probably does lie in central attacking midfield rather than as a left winger. I wanted to see Tell thought of as a potential backup to the number 9, but none of it really worked. As I say, with Donnelly at left back instead of Doggy, Johnson was forced to hold the width, and he looked like the left side was the moon to him. Mikey Moore and Tell really just didn't work. Mikey didn't seem to want to take any risks, and he wanted to play the ball to feet, and Tell, who isn't a ball into feet hold up kind of type of 9, he really wanted the ball played in behind, which Mikey Moore wasn't doing. I think it's just one of those things, but it gives us some things to look out for on the tour. In the Wycombe game, we saw some interesting things too. But like I say, playing the 2 games in the one day, despite it not being the most sort of thrilling day of football, it was definitely a good idea. I think that the pacing of this pre-season has been really good, with a ramping up of quality, so that you get to go through the install and the fitness stages and be able to get more out of the games against Premier League and Champions League opposition going into the start of the season. So I think that's been really good. But again, when I saw that Sarr, Bergvall and George Abbott, who was subbed in for Bentancur at the last minute, I think he felt ill, I assumed that it would be Abbott and Sarr in the double pivot and Bergvall as the 10, but this wasn't the case. Bergvall and Abbott played the double pivot together, and Sarr was the more advanced midfielder. Not only that, but Bergvall was more of a 6, with Abbott playing more like an 8. This is interesting to me because I think this is probably how Thomas Frank was going to play if Bentancur did play. So for some reason, I think of Bergvall as a number 10. But thinking back to last year, the 6 role actually makes a ton of sense for him. Firstly, he is not a small kid. He's not small. And secondly, he's really not afraid to put in a challenge. There was a couple of games last year where he was really putting himself about. So the defensive side of the role really isn't a problem for him at all. He is probably more defensively aware than both Bentancur and Basuma, sniffing out danger and reacting, but he also is incredibly comfortable on the ball, something that Biss has that Bence doesn't. And he has an eye for incisive pass, something that Bence has but Biss doesn't. So actually it might make quite a bit of sense. And this kind of played out in his numbers. So he had a 94% passing accuracy. He had 1 key pass, 3 of 4 long balls completed, and he also got an interception. So this bodes really well. I think the double pivot of Bergvall and Bentancur, with Bergvall being like more of the 6 and Bentancur getting back to his more natural fit of a box-to-box 8, is a really tantalising possibility. Now I really want to see Thomas Frank play his best 11. At the minute, I think that is probably Vicario, Romero, Van der Ven, Porro, Udogie, Bergvall, Bentancur, Maddison, Son, more on that later, Kudus and Solanke. I think in this situation, we'll see more of what we saw against Reading. Porro tucking into the back three in build-up, with Romero in the middle, Van der Ven on the left. Again, that role really suits Van der Ven on the left of the three. He can really use that ability that he has to drive the ball forward, which asks the real question of the teams that we're playing against. If they're going to try and sit into a mid to a low block, because if you drop back and cover, he'll drive at you, and he is dangerous when he does. If you press, he'll work the ball to Romero, and he'll find a ping to the player that you left open. So also don't think this takes anything away from Porro when he tucks in. Here he can find himself in similar positions to Trent Alexander-Arnold from last year in Liverpool. And passing really is his strength. I don't think it's a bad place to have him at all. So I think that having Bergvall and Bentancur in the double pivot ahead of them will really help the ball progression, allowing a front five of Kudus or Johnson to play that Mbeumo role, starting wide and drifting into the box, Maddison or Kulu when he's fit, to use their creativity with less defensive responsibility, and the combination of overlapping Udogie and Son or Tel on the left, and all this to provide Solanke with some of the service he was really starved of last year. I think it's exciting. There's a real offensive threat, but combined with defensive solidity. So that's about as excited as you can get about a couple of draws in pre-season. Right, so I guess that leads us on to depth. Because we've had some new information, we need to now update our assumptions. And this is how I see it at the minute. So we already spoke about the first 11, so let's focus on the backups, right? So let's start in defence. So Vuskovic, in my opinion, has to stay around. No need for a loan move. I know it's only been against lower league opposition in a pre-season, but I think he's really impressed me. I think that's probably true for Thomas Frank as well. He just looks really comfortable. He shows a lot of the same traits as Romero. I did notice that I think the fact that Thomas Frank shifted Romero to the left to play with him means that he is probably much more comfortable on the right-hand side. So that's probably where we'll see him come in when he does. Danso is going to be the first one off the bench. If anything it happens to Romero or Van der Ven, he looked really solid. He was also driving with the ball quite well. We haven't seen Takai play yet, but from watching some clips of him, seems to be comfortable on the left. I know he seems to play more on the right. He seems comfortable on the left, so that could potentially provide some depth there. Davies is definitely going to be playing left back, and I actually think that's really good. You're never going to get the same thing from him that you're going to get with Udogie, but assuming that Porro is still available, Spence would be the first player to come in at left back. So when Davies is being used at left back, we'll see the right back in that much more attacking role, with one of the central midfielders dropping into the back three, as we discussed earlier on. I think it's good to have different profiles in different positions. He can cover centre back if he needs to, but I'm perfectly comfortable if we didn't bring in another fullback. I think that's fine. Moving to midfield, so I've got Sarr here as the backup, but I think he's going to get a ton of minutes. So, like I was saying about the different profiles, right? He's comfortable in the double pivot, but he's also starting to look quite useful in a more advanced role. This is A, really good for cover, but B, something that I think Thomas Frank will use situationally against teams where you might expect to not have as much possession, or when you're winning and you really want to control the midfield. So that was interesting. It was a bit of a shame that Donnelly had to fill in at left back. He did move to 10 towards the end of the game. It wasn't really long enough to get a look at him. I hope he does still get a chance to get a look in the tour. I've still got him ahead of Alfie Devine. I would personally keep Donnelly around until at least January and see how many minutes he's seeing. I actually expect him to be a really decent number 10, but if given the chance, I think he can also provide some cover at left back. and he also played as a striker beforehand as well. So that brings us on to the attacking situation. So let's just, I guess, get on to it. Son, it's starting to look more and more likely that he's not going to be here. Personally, I think that this is a mistake. I think he really suffered from playing under Ange. He's always thrived when given the ability to like attack more on the inside. And I see this situation being a little bit like Mohamed Salah last year, right? So rumours of Saudi money was starting to seem a little bit more tempting to Liverpool fans. I mean, he'd been on the decline in terms of output for the last couple of years, right? He's turning 33, yeah? And then Arne Slot comes in and puts him in high XG positions and he smashes 47 goal contributions. That's just in the Premier League. We can see that from the heat map of his last year under Klopp, and then look at last year. You can see there's so much more red inside the box. Personally, I would really love to see Sonny hang around, and for Thomas Frank to get him into the box where he's dangerous with less defensive responsibility and less running. Annoyingly, though, we haven't seen that in the first two pre-season games. So far, we've seen him play with Ben Davies both times, which has meant he's been required to provide the width. So that's definitely something I'm going to be looking out for on the tour. He didn't really do much to make an argument for himself as a backup number 9. I see him on the wing. And if Son does go, he could really benefit from a left flank with Udogie overlapping. So I think he'll be good there, but I don't see him as striker. I'm still not sure that there's really a consensus between Johnson and Kudus on the right. Kudus had the better game against Reading. I don't think either of them really did anything in the two preseason games yesterday. So the bit that was interesting though was Oliver. I actually thought potentially he might end up heading out on loan. But he definitely did raise his stock, and I think he should probably be kept kept in as backup. He can play on the left and on the right. In terms of the other wingers, so it really looks like Mikey Moore's probably going to go out on loan. It looks like he wants to go out on loan and get some minutes, and I think that's probably the best thing. Similarly, I think it would be great if Yang could head back to QPR. Solanke didn't play, but Richarlison got through 70 plus minutes without an injury, so that's good. Nothing changed really then regarding the options at number 9, other than that we did get to see Sonny there for about 10 to 15 minutes when Richie went off. All right, so let's finish up by updating the squad depth. So according to the calculations I went through in the last video, the squad depth video, the players that I have in red here wouldn't be registered for the Champions League. They would be registered for the Premier League. I don't really think this is a problem. Maybe centre-back looks a bit thin based on the last few seasons' injuries that we've had to deal with. But I guess Davies can cover, or Davies can definitely cover, but I guess Gray could cover too. Probably not as a centre-back, but if he was used as part of the back 3. Here, I haven't registered Kinski, and I imagine Thomas Frank would be a bit hesitant to do that, going in with just 2 goalkeepers, which would potentially mean that Archie Gray not being registered to be able to register him. So I think if we're in a situation where we're really reliant on an 18-year-old midfielder potentially covering a centre-back, we probably have bigger problems. So yeah, but this is the situation with that. So again, not too bad. All right, so that wraps up our double-header deep dive. We saw Porro unleash, Romero quarterbacking, Bergvall bossing midfield, and the depth chart that's taking shape fast under Thomas Frank. Pre-season is only just heating up, so there's plenty more data coming from the tour. If you've got any value from that breakdown, hit the like button, please. It really helps. And please make sure to subscribe. You'll be told when I'm making more videos and stuff like that. So I'll be doing more for the games against Arsenal, Newcastle, and Bayern Munich, and then leading up to the Super Cup game. So who impressed you? What do you think about Basuma dropping left? Are you keeps on or cash in? Let me know. Thanks.